of the Perkins 5 Act. Last year was a transition year from Perkins 4 into Perkins 5. And this year we are full on into Perkins 5, and we are going to be focusing on this comprehensive local needs assessment because it is a major chunk of the work that you need to do to write a grant for the Perkins 5 application. This was modeled after a similar requirement in ESSA. However, the ESSA needs assessment didn't quite match the needs of career and technical education. So we had to create this in a way that will benefit your programs by going through this process, as well as meet the needs of the grant so that you can receive grant funds again this year. So we'd encourage you to think about the CLNA as an opportunity. So oftentimes we think of e-grants as compliance and we're focused on, oh, we just have to do it because we're jumping through hoops. But truly, you know, along the way, we've been working hard to encourage you to review your CTE programs, think about things that can be improved, and this needs assessment is giving you an opportunity to do that. Looking at how are you serving the needs of all of the learners in your district. Are you offering programs and programs of study that are leading to workforce development or post-secondary education attainment? And looking at how can you engage key stakeholders in your community so that they are a part of your career and tech ed program, and you're bringing in that aspect as well. So hopefully you're thinking of it as an opportunity here and not a challenge. We have a lot of information to share with you today, and we've posted a lot on our website, and those links will come up in the chat as we get there to provide you the support you need while you work through this. Okay, Renee.
Great. So we're going to talk about investing your Perkins resources. The most important change to recognize is the allocation of resources by local eligible recipients must be aligned with the results of the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. So this is a significant shift from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. What we're talking about here is that when you get to your eGrants application, which we are going to show you in tests today, we're going to have things laid out as your priorities from your CLNA. So we'll walk through what that looks like. We will not publish a permissive uses manual of how you spend your money. In Perkins 5, there's really one sheet that gives you required uses of funds. The page is located under the Assurances tab, and so there's not all of those restrictions that you had from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. Next slide, please. You should already have advisory committees established, as these were mandated in Perkins 4. You may need to broaden your advisory group to include categories noted above, or perhaps visit with your local two-year college for advisory partnerships. We will ask you to provide the names and businesses in eGrants of the people who have worked on your CLNA. So if you recall from the past applications, you were able to put in your advisory committees per program area. That's not there anymore. All we have is one advisory group that is made up of your Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment partners, not including your school staff. So we just are looking for the people that you've been working with. Next slide, please. This is more stakeholder engagement. And as you might be seeing, what we're trying to do in the slides is give you exactly what the law is saying. We did not make this up at the state level just to make your life more complicated. We realize this is a really stressful time for everyone. So what the law actually means here is Perkins 5 requires continued consultation with the stakeholder groups involved in the local needs assessment development with specific parameters determined by the eligible agency. So what's going to be really good about having these partnerships that are quite strong is when we start talking about things like work-based learning, where your students are out in the community getting some experience, that these partnerships are going to come in really, really handy. Over to you, Megan.
Thanks, Renee. So what information are you going to need as a CTE department or as a school to complete your comprehensive local needs assessment? Something I'd like to add in here is that this isn't just the responsibility of one person. Ideally, this is happening amongst your CTE departments, your teachers and administration. So this really is a joint effort. The information that you're going to need and to gather along the way for the assessment is your student performance data, your size, scope, and quality. We're going to talk about labor market alignment, progress towards implementing CTE programs and programs of study, otherwise known as Montana Career Pathways, recruitment, retention, and training of your CTE staff, and progress towards improving access and equity to all students and all special populations to high quality CTE areas. This is an example of what the CLNA is going to look like. For those of you that haven't had a chance to open it, just wanted to show you a visual of what you can expect the Excel document to look like. Each section is broken into tabs and parts. You're going to be rating yourselves on the specific statements and then kind of describing that, listing strengths or areas of focus that you could improve on, and then indicating the evidence reviewed. You know, we're not looking for paragraphs in each of these, but we are asked, you know, the ones that you are able to address them that apply to you, you will want to write in a few sentences and talk about how you came to that conclusion and where that information came from. Go ahead, Renee.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. As I will show you during this presentation, the eGrant application will take less time to complete. Yay! Hopefully everybody's excited about that. And the CLNA will be uploaded by you and will provide a thorough understanding of what CTE looks like in your school. So once you have the CLNA done, honestly, the main part of the application is going to be a breeze. And we'll talk about that again in this presentation. Next slide, please. Here's some tips for you. The CLNA has a rating rubric, as Megan just mentioned, on each page, and you're going to rate yourself determining from needs improvement to something that is a strength in your school. We want you to know that the CLNA is not a report card. We are not grading you on how good or bad you rate yourself. If you score yourself as perfect, though, throughout this whole thing, it implies that you don't need Perkins funding, that everything is just perfect. So really keep in mind, I really look at this as a strategic plan for the next 4 years. Also note, you will not be denied funds if you're working toward your goals. So for instance, if you don't have your work-based learning already in place, or you don't have a dual credit already in place, don't worry. We're looking at this as a strategic plan. The needs you identify in your CLNA become your priorities for Perkins spending. Remember, I was just talking about that. And not every space needs to be filled in if it doesn't have an effect on your school. So as you're going through this, keep in mind that these documents are designed as a one-size-fits-all, and we realize that all of you are quite unique. So we're not expecting you to fill every single line. Next slide, please. Do we have questions in the chat, Megan or Shannon or Eric, that we want to address right now?
I have not seen any questions yet. Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Nope, there's none in there right now.
I have a private one that might be worth everyone. If you haven't downloaded the needs assessment, the link that I provided, when you go on that page, you'll go down to the needs assessment and you'll see the manual, and then you'll also see an Excel fillable form, and that's what you want to download.
Any of our participants want to unmute and ask any questions at this time? Okay, well, seeing none, we will keep moving forward. So where to find the CLNA? It sounds like a few of you have asked that already, and I just wanted to show you a visual of where to find it on our OPI website. So if you go to opi.mt.gov, you can click hover over the educators option there in the middle of the page. That'll pull up the following gray areas, the boxes, and you can go under teaching and learning and click on career and technical education. That will pull up our CTE page. If you scroll down a little ways, you're going to see a big bluish purplish box that says everything you need to know for Perkins 5. So click on that, and that is where we are posting all things Perkins 5. And if you scroll down again, you'll be able to click on a gray heading bar, and that is where you will find the comprehensive local needs assessment. The first link is a guidance document, about a 30-some page PDF that gives a lot of the descriptions we're talking about today and can be used as you're filling it out. The second is the fillable form. It is an Excel file. And then below that are examples of completed parts from Custer County District High School in Miles City. They finished theirs earlier this summer, and they were gracious enough to share that with us so that we could share with some of you, so you had an example to see what a completed one looked like. Great, back to you, Renee. Oh, just kidding. I'll keep talking. You're like, surprise. So let's talk about part A. This is evaluating student performance. What you're going to look at here is the student performance of your CTE students as in comparison to non-CTE students, as well as your student performance from your special populations, which are defined in the E-Grant application. You're going to look at performance of different genders, races, ethnicities, all of those areas, and look at, are there any performance gaps? Are there any areas in which they're not excelling? And what does that mean? So here is what part A looks like in the needs assessment. You can see the first statement there: students in each CTE program perform acceptably on federal accountability indicators in comparison to non-CTE students. So in this case, Miles City reviewed their ACTE scores as their evidence reviewed, and then they kind of showed the breakdown of the entire class of 2020, and then what the concentrators from each area of CTE looked like and what their scores were, so they could kind of do a comparison. They felt that they were doing satisfactory in this area. The next statement: students from special populations perform acceptably in each CTE program. They reviewed their student transcripts and looked at some of the percentages in the data there. Continuing on part A, this is the, I just had to do screenshots to show you the examples, but if you're going down the Excel spreadsheet list, you'll see the rest of the statements for part A. Students from different genders, races, and ethnicities perform acceptably in each CTE program. So you're going to look at the scores of those students, how they're doing, and if they're accessing the programs as equally as your other students. Performance gaps: are there any between subgroups? There are CTE programs where special populations are performing above average, so you're going to look at where is that happening, and are there, conversely, are there any special populations that are performing below average in any of your CTE programs? So you'll see here, Miles City felt that one of their subgroups of students was not performing as well in their family and consumer sciences classes as some of the others. So when you go down the page and you're asked to write a narrative, please describe the results of this. You'll see that they're going to look at some professional development and making some changes in the family and consumer sciences program to ensure that that student population is able to do better in the future. Now, Renee, it's your turn.
Thank you. The next section is part B1, size, scope, and quality. And what does that mean? Well, first of all, when we came into Perkins 5, all states are required to determine what they mean by size, scope, and quality. There's a recording on our OPI website that provides very detailed information on our definition of size, scope, and quality. In Perkins 4, schools only needed one state-approved pathway, if you recall. So now with size, AA schools are now required to have 3 approved pathways, or medium-sized schools 2 pathways, and small schools 1 pathway. Your programs and curriculum should be aligned to workforce needs and have work-based learning and dual credit options as well. Next slide, please. again, we're continuing down with Custer County's assessment of what they did here. And I want to point out strengths and areas of focus here. So what we're looking at is briefly list your strengths or areas of focus of what's going on. So they do offer 2 pathways for this size school in information technology and agriculture. They do have some strong course progressions built into it. And then they're also looking at their evidence, indicate the evidence reviewed. They went to this Montana Career Pathways. That's at www.mus.edu/MCP. If you scroll down from the first picture, you'll see all of the 16 pathways. We also have that link on our OPI website. They looked at their course catalog to see what the recommended courses were for a program of study or career pathway. So they were also looking to see if there's any populations that are excluded from CTE courses, what that means, and how special populations have adequate accommodations or modifications to participate. Next slide, please. So again, we're just looking at each of these questions. I want to tell you that as Miles City was working on this, they did send probably 30 emails back and forth with questions on what we meant by this. So they are thrilled to be able to share what their work has been. They have been working on this. They work closely with their job service. They work closely with Miles Community College. And so all of this work has been put together for your information as we're going through this. Just read through these questions, kind of look at where you're going to access your data from, and then just give us a little bit of information. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if we've mentioned it yet, but you'll see on the bottom of each page that there's a bolded box. Okay, so these have to be filled out, and this is going to be the only redundancy in the new Perkins 5 application. We apologize for this. So even though you are indeed uploading your CLNA and we can see these answers, we were asked by our federal liaison to create a summary page from the CLNA. And so what I'm going to ask you to do ahead of time is just copy and paste these into a document so that when you get into your eGrant application, you can simply cut and paste them back into the page that says summary. Next slide, please. Okay. This one's talking about labor market alignment. And again, for Perkins 5, this is very different from the past. We are being asked to analyze our CTE programs and how they're meeting workforce needs. You can look at local, regional, or statewide data. So for those of you in really small schools, I know we have Lavina, Rapelje on the line, some other small schools. We want you to know that we hear you and that you may, I see that Shannon has just put up the Department of Labor CTE dashboard for you to look at as well. So some of the statistical areas of the CLNA will need to be handled within the school, but labor market alignment is a place where your stakeholder group can assist with. Next slide, please. Here's an example.
Renee, can I interject something real quick just to let people know?
Absolutely.
That dashboard link that I just sent, our Department of Labor partners actually went in and designed it to specifically answer the questions on this needs assessment. And there's a tutorial video that you can watch if you're not sure how to use the dashboard, but you can actually screenshot and capture the data to put into your needs assessment.
Thank you, Shannon. That's exactly right on. The first time we tried the dashboard, it didn't quite meet what the specifications were, and so they've redone it, and it's great. So here they looked at their programs, and they do include professional skills. So these are your employability skills. And they were also looking at evidence reviewed, the numbers and the labor market data from their particular area, their region. And of course, they're working with their job service, so that was easy for them to do. They have policies in place to respond to changes in the labor market and develop new or refine existing CTE programs. We are by no means suggesting that you fire a CTE teacher if you find that your workforce doesn't align with that particular person. Each of our CTE areas really has a whole lot of things. So maybe you just want to tweak to find out what's the specific area that you may need. What they found here in Miles City is that they had a need for increasing more healthcare providers. And so they started adding health science courses. And this year they'll actually come up with their new 2-year pathway. Next slide, please. So they had industry partners indicate that the students graduate ready to enter high skill, in demand, and high wage industries. Well, they found that they weren't doing super well on that. So one of the ideas that they had was the job service has a person that is specifically working with individual students. And we're talking, when we talk about work-based learning, we're talking about concentrators, not everyone in your school. So if you have a student concentrator who has completed 2 full years of CTE course in a particular area, then they would be eligible for work-based learning. So when they're doing work-based learning, what they do is the job service now places students, and they have an evaluation process in place to see how the students are doing. And then the students also get to evaluate the workplace, which is a nice touch. So students kind of feel like they can give feedback on this as well. Programs graduate employees that thrive in the workplace. When they were talking with their local businesses, they found that the local businesses really wanted to reinforce those employability skills as well. Okay, this is again that bolded bar, the bolded box that you're going to see at the bottom of each of these pages that need to be filled out. So they collected and reviewed a wide variety of labor market reports from the job service. Reports included the data from both Miles community as well as the greater Eastern Montana region. You can take a look at however you would like to do that. Shannon, should we pause for Diane's question?
Sure, sorry, I was answering another question and missed that one. Okay, Diane, do you have a specific question? Do you want to hop on?
I do. Thank you very much. So when you were talking about the industry partners with in that one section in part B2, and it says industry partners indicate that students graduate ready to enter high skill, in demand, high wages. I want to, if you could cover what needs to be in that section again, because that was one that I really struggled with, and I want to make sure I got it right. Okay.
Did you do any, so Diane, this is Renee, did you do any kind of either just face-to-face conversation or nowadays a Zoom meeting to find out with the businesses in your community when they do get high school graduates or high schoolers that are working with them, how well they feel the students fit into those positions?
We do have an advisory board. It started off as a, I don't know, an educational committee to help students go into the workforce through the Chamber of Commerce. So that kind of morphed into our advisory committee for our comprehensive needs assessment. And I haven't talked to them since the pandemic. So we did meet with them like like before all this really happened. And they did, so should we meet with them again before I submit this, just to cover all of this again? Because I don't know I don't really remember how well we covered this particular part with that advisory committee.
Okay, my suggestion is going to be that you fill this out and that you can actually discuss it over Zoom, or perhaps just send it via email and have them take a look at it one more time. I want to tell you, I'm glad you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, because this is a really interesting project that Missoula County Public Schools already have done. They've been partnering with the Missoula Chamber of Commerce now for 2 years. The Chamber of Commerce has a survey that they put out to all of their members, asking them how they might support high school students. So could they come in and be guest speakers in the school? Do they have some sort of job shadowing or tours? Do they have summer employment? Will they have paid or unpaid internships? And I do have a copy of that survey, Diane. So after this meeting, I will make a note to send that to you, that maybe you want to share with your Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
Thank you. I just need a little clarification, that's all.
No problem. We can move on.
Great
Megan.
question. Any other questions on that section? Okay. We'll go on to part C. This is the progress toward, how are you progressing towards implementing CTE programs and programs of study or career pathways? This is an evaluation piece so that you're reviewing your programs and your career pathways as you go. So here is the first part of the spreadsheet. We're looking at if your programs are fully aligned and articulated across secondary and post-secondary education. You'll want to refer to working with whichever post-secondary institution you work with, or if you work with a couple of them, depending on your location. Are you helping with a seamless transition between high school and post-secondary, whether that's 1 year, 2 year, or 4 year program, or right into the workforce? Looking at if programs are incorporating relevant academic, technical, and employability skills at every learner level. So you'll want to think about how that is happening, or if there's room for improvement on that part. The third statement is students can enroll or earn dual credit through participation in programs. That's going to vary across schools. Some schools have been able to do dual credit agreements through CTE programs, and some schools have not been able to, just depending on the institutions. So again, this is one of those things where we're not scoring you on whether or not it's happening. We're looking at, is it part of the conversation, and how are you progressing towards that goal? Students in programs of study have multiple entry and exit points. This is a little bit more geared towards post-secondary, but how are you looking at your Montana career pathways? Are students ready for employment in an industry when they graduate high school? Are they able to access post-secondary schools easily after that? Are they prepared for that? Is there any overlap or missing pieces? So looking at all of your programs of study that you offer or you intend to be offering, and truly reviewing those. And then the last one there is post-program placement indicator meets the state negotiated level. So you will continue to check in with the concentrators 6 months after they graduate to mark if they're employed, if they're in college, if they're in the military, and looking at what those numbers looks like. You'll see there the further questions to consider. Are your students being retained in the same program of study, or are they just flopping around? We used to have the blended concentrator, and that is no more. Your students have to be marked by a program of study that is offered within your school. So are students being shared those opportunities, and are they able to participate in multiple classes within a program of study? What is the role of secondary and post-secondary partners in your current program of study design and delivery? And what is the role of business and industry in your programs of study? All things to consider. And then you'll see the narrative there asking you to talk about what pathways you currently offer, which ones you're looking at offering or might be improving, and then listing your dual enrollment options as well as industry recognized credentials that you might find within those. If you are not sure which pathways your school offers, please feel free to reach out to us. We as specialists review review all of our CTE programs in the spring. We have marked and reviewed which pathways are offered in every program. We have a master list, and we are happy to share that with you because you will need to know that for this, and then you'll want to know that when you fill out fall and spring accountability.
We are also working at getting that master list on our website so that you can access that information as well.
Great, thank you, Shannon.
Right, thank you.
So Part D is recruitment, retention, and training of faculty and staff. This is something that we're seeing nationwide, that there's a shortage of teachers, not only in academic fields, but also in CTE. With CTE, though, we also have our Class 4 endorsements that can help you out a little bit. So Part D refers to how are you doing locally as far as your recruitment, retention, and training. Keep in mind that OPI no longer requires a 10% set aside for professional development, so you won't see that on your Perkins application. The new law clearly states that this is a focus of Perkins, but you can spend your Perkins money, you can spend whatever your other kinds of funds for any kind of professional development. We are not regulating that anymore. So ask yourself what areas would help your teachers and paraprofessionals and target your professional development dollars accordingly on this. We're also looking for how you are doing as far as recruitment or retention to perhaps share ideas between schools or with colleges that are training our future teachers. Next slide, please. Here's some of the questions coming up on Part D of that assessment. The campus or district CTE staff reflects the demographic makeup of the student body. Now, you may not have any say over that. I know in a lot of our reservation schools, we are looking to see if we can get more Native Americans that are teaching so that the students perhaps might feel a little more empowered in their work. There are processes in place to recruit new CTE educators. How does that work? So here they rated themselves that they needed improvement. It is a challenge for them, and even larger districts are showing vacancies right now. So they did talk with their teachers to find out what was going on. So the campus or the district has an onboarding process. That's another thing to think about. How do people get acclimated into your community? Do you have kind of a welcome wagon model that really helps your teachers, your new teachers especially, get involved with the kinds of things that you have going on, even in a very small community? How do they meet people? What kinds of activities do you have for them to do if they're coming here as young adults? And all educators teaching in programs are adequately credentialed. So here they did rate themselves quite well, which is great. And they were looking at all the certifications and licensures on file. Next page, please. More questions? So we're looking here at regular, substantive, and effective professional development is offered around CTE, academic, and technical instruction. Right now, you may need to have very specific instruction on how to, if you're doing blended classes, how you're doing some classes online, some in person. I know we have models, every which way across this state as far as how school is going to open. Is there some training that needs to be done before you get going? Do you have new teachers that may be walking into a model that they've never seen before, and how would that help? I want to bring up right now that your CTE division at OPI has just put together a class on the Learning Hub for CTE educators on how to do online programming. So that is free of charge. It should only take a couple hours to do, and we'd really encourage you to tell your CTE educators that that's available to them. So you can also be developing or recruiting your CTE instructors from existing staff, and how might that help having teachers that might be certified in more than one area in your school. Next slide, please. So this is the last one. We're showing you this bolded box. So they recruit through local means and the OPI website. Most of you are already doing that. They do have a mentor program. So their new teachers in the district are paired with experienced educators and have meeting time with minimum hours, observation, and evaluation. They also have professional learning communities in this school, which I really think is fantastic. And we also have had conversations about those PLCs, not just staying within their discipline, but maybe doing cross-training with academic and CTE areas so all your teachers know exactly what the students are doing in different areas. Megan, back to you.
Thanks, Renee. Part E of the CLNA is talking about access and equity. Perkins 5 has a major focus on access and equity and truly looking at how are we removing barriers and ensuring that all students within your programs have equal access to high quality CTE and career pathways. This is a new focus within Perkins 5, or a larger focus now than in previous years. So we're going to get into what that looks like. So here is part E. Some of the statements that you're going to be considering include that you do provide equal access to all CTE programs for Perkins subpopulations. So some of those subpopulations include low-income students, that are their families in the military. We are looking at English language learners, which we do have in Montana. We are looking at the minority students. So there's different areas there of that segment to be thinking about, and special needs, of course, when you're looking at access and equity, all of those different categories. So how are you organizing your schedule or creating things or counseling or providing conversation to help them learn about which courses they could be taking within CTE. Second statement there is there are no enrollment discrepancies for students from special populations in the programs. So you're going to look at some of your enrollment data, your PowerSchool, different achievement things, and your demographic data. Processes are in place to encourage all students to complete programs. So again, how are you having these conversations? How is this information being put in front of all students so that they know what options are there? And then the district actively addresses potential barriers that might prevent special populations from participating in, performing in, or completing programs. So you're going to look at your non-discrimination statements. How does that look in your school? Are there scheduling barriers? Are there barriers for like facilities? So does your culinary arts lab have a station in it, a kitchen area that's ADA compliant? Are your students able to access all of the classrooms in an ADA compliant manner? You know, there's so many things to consider there. So truly looking at how are you helping all students to access things equitably, and what support are you providing? Accommodations, modifications, and support services are provided. And the last statement there is actively encouraging special population students to enroll in high quality CTE programs. This conversation looks a little different in Montana than it would in you know, urban Cincinnati, where they have major challenges to provide all students with access to high quality CTE because they have transportation barriers, road barriers, all sorts of things. But that doesn't mean that there aren't barriers in schools in Montana, and truly thinking about how are all of your students in the school being counseled, and how are you providing access to make sure that all of them can access your high quality programs so that they can look at what their options are after high school. And then you'll see on the bottom there the description or the explanation that you want to give, talking about preparation of your special populations for those in-demand occupations and providing equal access. Let's see.
We get to part F, and this is performance measures. So some of these indicators.
Renee, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We have one question before we get into the performance indicators.
Sure.
So Diane is asking if there is about CTE programs that online students, will that need to be included as a barrier?
I would say the answer is yes, if you have technology issues that students do not have access to internet, do not have access to computers, do not have access to someone that's a support service to them at home. If you have homeless students that perhaps don't have any other alternatives for being able to work, are your libraries open in your communities where they could access their laptops? So yes, I think you could certainly add that, especially since we don't know how long we'll be in COVID state.
Also thinking about online instruction, and if you're having trouble filling CTE positions, which we know is a problem, that could also be a barrier that you're having to look for online curriculum to support those students.
Is that helpful,
I see a
Diane?
thumbs up. So, yep, I see she did a thumbs up.
All right.
Thank you.
So part F, performance measures. These are going to look familiar from Perkins 5, but they have been renumbered, so we can't take things from the old Perkins application into the new application. The indicators with an asterisk behind them they're new, and we did not collect any data for these in the past. And these are going to be new ones so when you open up your eGrant, you'll see that there's no numbers in there for academic proficiency in science. That's going to be taken from the ACT test. There's attained post-secondary credits that we will get from the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education and participated in work-based learning. We do have high school course codes for you to use for work-based learning options. I know I've had a lot of conversations with people who say, well, we already do that, say 1 day a week in our normal class. And so we'll work with you on breaking out your seat time versus your work-based learning time into another course code so we can start measuring how much you have students out of school or doing some other activities. Keep in mind, these are for your concentrators only, your CTE concentrators. Next slide, please. Your school data is posted on our OPI website in the CLNA section. I believe the link, has the link been added to the chat box so everyone can access that right away, or did we put this up before?
Nope, it's in the chat box.
Excellent. Thank you. Diane is asking a question about if you don't have data for some years, that's going to be absolutely a-okay. So on this is the next part F of the CLNA, and I don't expect any of you to have a not met 3 consecutive years or more. We've changed our state negotiated levels from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. And so that's going to be blank right now. You will all have 1S1, your 4-year graduation rate. We give you that information. You will all have academic proficiency in reading and math. Now those things, again, when we're talking about this data being your concentrators, if you're a very small school and your concentrator number is 10 or lower, we can't give you that number. That's something that you're just going to have to find internally so that you can see how well your students are completing this. We also know that when you look at statistics with numbers like 5, 6, 7, 8, that you really skew how the students are overall performing. And so we will work with you on this. The non-trad program concentrator, if you remember in the past, we used to have a non-traditional program participant as well as a concentrator. All we're looking for is a concentrator. Now that we have 16 different pathways, rather than just looking at ag, business, family consumer sciences, health sciences, and trades and industry, there's more room for non-traditional program concentrators. Post-program placement, just new wording for exactly what you've been doing since 2007, which is contacting students who graduated last June. Usually you do this in the fall, 6 months after they've graduated, to find out if they're in college, if they're in the workforce, if they are in the military, or if they're unemployed. So we are not going to be collecting the post-secondary credentials or work-based learning this year, so those will be blank as well. So what we are looking for, as you saw, part of the law says that you're going to integrate academic and technical skills for students. So for instance, if you do have lower scores in academic proficiency for mathematics, perhaps you can tell us how in your CTE programs you're going to really boost the level of practical math. So math that can be applied to what they're doing in hands-on projects in CTE. Next slide, please. So there are these summary questions I talked about before that we have been asked by our federal liaison to put in. I just wanted to show you them really quickly. These first two questions are going to be in part A. And I do want you to take a look at the questions that what you've written into your bolded boxes on each of the pages, and save that separately so you'll have easy access to put it into your eGrant application. There's questions 3, 4, 5. There's only 8 questions altogether. So we're just going to quickly go through these. This part B1 and B2 are the first 2 questions. Part C is question 5. As we get into this, question 6 is part C, and 7, and then question 8 has to do with part D. So there's just 8 statements in all. This is the only part of the application that you should see that's redundant. Thank you. We're going to move on to an eGrants demonstration. This is going to be in test. Excuse me. We thought that we would have our eGrants open by July 1. With the number of new changes in ESSA, Title 1 through 5, plus the CARES Act work, we have literally one programmer at OPI who has been working pretty much night and day to try to get this done. And so I will do another test run of eGrants tonight, and we're hoping that it can go live by the end of the week.
We have a small problem. Not letting me open the test site.
Ah. Oh, they might be actually trying to upload right now. We've been working on it all morning.
Carla just sent an email saying that it has been up, or that it's up now, but I can't get it to open.
No problem, folks. I can literally just talk you through it. Anyone that's done an application before, it is going to look very much the same. There's only one row of tabs across the top. And any one of our specialists, our CTE specialists, can walk you through those tabs. It's basically going to tell you an overview of the program. It's going to ask you for your contact information. It's going to ask you, when you click on the tab that says CLNA, it will open asking you to write in your school. You're going to pick your pathways. All you have to do is click on them. Then there's going to be a page for your advisory committee for your CLNA. So this isn't general CLNA. This is going to be very specific to, I'm sorry, not general advisory committees in each program area. It's only the people working on the CLNA. It's going to have you upload your CLNA document. When you get over to your funding distribution page, all you need to do is give us the narrative according to what you're prioritizing in your narrative, in your CLNA. Let me give you an example of that. For instance, if you want to spend money now on perhaps busing your CTSO, your student organization students, to get to their state conference this year, because that is going to be part of your work-based learning strategy, you could do it. This is up. Thank you.
I just have the one screenshot you sent me, so I thought I'd throw it up there while you talk through everything.
Fantastic. So I was just talking about the fund distribution. This one is the budget detail page. This is where you're going to give us that detail. So do you remember you used to have your purpose category on the left-hand side and the object codes were across the top and the right. Now the object codes and purpose category are together. So object code, you can see those object codes are across the top, 100, 200, 300, 400. If you are a district clerk, you know that there's some nuance within each of those. We just need the general number, whether it's salaries, whether it's employee benefits, purchase professional and technical. That's if you're going to have people come in and teach for you. I know in CTE, a lot of times we use that for a certified nursing assistant instructor that comes in and some schools pay for part of her instruction. We very rarely use category 400. Category 500, I know it says other purchase category services. That is professional development and pupil transportation. Category 600, keep in mind that is for minor equipment under $5,000. Category 700 is only used for equipment that is a single piece that is 5,000 or more. Category 800 we use for any of your teacher professional membership dues, okay? So what we'd like to see in this expenditure description and itemization, since you don't have to put as much detail in your fund distribution, tell me, for instance, well, employee benefits is a weird one to start with, but if we looked at category 600, then Diane is asking, would 600 be used for online simulations that cost 7,200? Is that a total student cost or one simulation cost, Diane? Can you tell us?
Yeah, that's a district cost, and it's spread over 3 years for simulations for FCS, business,
Okay.
sports management, and that's it for those 3 pathways.
That would be in category 600. However, the second thing you said, which was spread over 3 years, this is per year allocation. And so is there a way that you can work with that company to spread that cost out? Or can you use, say, a third of it from Perkins and use your state VOED money to fund something in some other part of it? Or can you work with that company to give you 1 year at a time, knowing that Perkins can only take 1 year at a time?
Okay, but would since that's a recurring cost, would that still apply for Perkins? If we get it 1 year at a time and it turns out to be a recurring cost.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, yes,
would
I can
work
work
for
with
me.
that. I can work with that. Thank you.
All righty. So then what you're going to do is you'll have the columns here. You can delete rows if you need. And if you have any trouble with this, please call one of us. We'd be happy to help you work through this. When I saw it, I've been playing with this and putting in different numbers and seeing how it all comes out, and it really will help you in the end. So I apologize that the eGrants test is not up and running right now, but I suppose that's a really good thing that we're moving toward having that go live. All right. Any questions?
Shannon, are you still unable to access the test site?
Yes, I'm guessing she is, Megan. What happens is it goes from demonstration, development, then it has to go to the Midwest for a test site, and then so if they're working on the test site, we can't open it while they're actually doing the work in it. My apologies, had no idea.
She's on the phone with Carla trying to get it. So now that we've gone through the different aspects of the CLNA, are there any overarching questions? Are there any more particular questions that we can answer while you have all of us on the Zoom at one time, which, I mean, when do you get that opportunity? I think I'm funny today because all I see is names. I don't see any faces, so.
Megan, I have a question.
You bet.
So this is time-wise, what kind of time commitment are you looking at to complete this?
It's a great question. Has anybody been told from their schools how many hours they put into it or what the?
I know working with East Helena, which they're a little bit in a little bit of a different boat because they're just starting as a school district. It's taken them, and they're not finished, but I would say they've probably put about 10 to 12 hours into it already. And that's with their meetings. So they do meet with their advisory committee every other month. And they have for the past year and a half. But they're starting a new school, so they meet with their advisory committee a lot more often than most schools do. Yeah.
Dan, are you asking when it's due?
No, he's asking how long it's going to take them to complete it
So
potentially.
what's up?
Renee,
Yes.
I don't know.
he was asking how
Yeah,
long it might
that's a good
take him to
question.
complete it.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, Shannon, that you've got a good 10 to 15 hours. However, right now, folks, the grant is due on, your application is due September 15th. And so I would say if you can work within your school to get a lot of your data put together, that perhaps having a meeting with either your school board or bringing together your advisory board in a Zoom meeting and showing them what you have and maybe just discussing your work-based learning pages or some pages that they really could help you with would be a good alternative. I know we have a short turnaround time. We know that this is, you have to have COVID plans coming up. And so we truly are not trying to just make your life absolutely miserable and impossible right now. So please count on us to help you out with getting these completed.
And know that you don't have to coordinate people in person. This can be done through a Google Doc where you're each working on it as you're able to. And you definitely want to utilize all CTE teachers and whoever else can help you work on it within your schools. So utilize technology, meet the best you can, chunk things out. Some administrators have taken the lead on it, and then they've divvied up parts to their teachers and they've come back and reviewed it together just to try to get, work on it together and collectively and know that this is, as we've said, the chunk of your e-grant. So once you have this work done, the grant itself will be pretty easy to complete. So this is where the focus is. We've had a lot of schools that have worked on it last spring. They worked on it earlier this summer. When COVID hit or this summer, they had some time, so they spent on it. We decided to do these large Zoom trainings for those of you that wanted to learn a little bit more. There's a lot posted out there, and we are here to answer questions at any point. So there is a section within the e-grant where you are going to list the names of the advisory board, and that is members who are not school faculty, so your business and industry partners. You're going to be asked to list their name and their business.
And what CTE area they best align with on that board. Yeah, and I would echo what Megan said, that there's a lot of different technology out there to be able to interact with folks. Breaking it down and working with a few schools, they've been the ones to focus on the performance indicators because that's not something their business partners can necessarily do and gather that data. they've really tasked their business and industry partners for that labor market piece in the diversity and inclusion components, because those are really the focus of getting students and connecting them with those business and industry folks.
You can also ask your Chamber of Commerce to be one of those partners, as well as connecting with the Department of Labor. You know, the Department of Labor is a big partner of ours, and they're happy to help and answer questions. And you could call them and ask a few questions if you wanted. You know, your local determination will be your determination of what local means. Is that your town or your city? Is that your county? Is that half the state? Is that the whole state? There's no limitation and there's no right or wrong answer within these. So again, just remember, we're not grading these. We're not going to say, no, this is wrong. I mean, this is the work you do on your assessment. And if you put in a, you know, decent, good faith effort, most likely you're going to come out with a good assessment.
And just to echo, I know this was stated and we've had a few people hop on since then, but your performance levels are not indicators of whether you're getting Perkins. The requirements for you to receive Perkins are that you do a needs assessment, you fill out a grant application, and you do our data reporting in the spring and the fall. Those are the requirements for you to be eligible for Perkins. Everything else, it's a, you know, like Renee said, this is a strategic plan on how you're going to utilize your CTE programs to meet those needs in your community and within your school system. And all the questions don't have to be addressed through Perkins funding. You know, there's a lot of overlap between reading programs and different things that you're already doing. So it's just a matter of making note of those things. I think once you chunk that down, it seems a little bit less like a huge task to complete this needs assessment.
Shannon, can you also speak to the fact that I know yesterday we had some people that were very concerned because they don't get very much in Perkins money under 5,000, and what we're doing?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we do have this year an additional opportunity for any school that receives less than $5,000 in Perkins, that they can apply for a Rural Reserve Secondary Schools grant. Up to $2,000 extra additional dollars. And we tried to make that grant as seamless as possible. So the first two checkpoints on it are, have you completed the local needs assessment and the e-grant? Once you have those, then there's just a series of a couple of questions. And those questions really are just asking, how is this additional $2,000 going to support the goals that you have outlined in your needs assessment? So we're not asking for a lot of extra work to get those additional dollars, but we wanted to use that to help support our small schools that do not receive a lot of Perkins money, because we know this is a big lift in the way that we've changed the Perkins grant from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. I'm excited about it though, because I think it gives you a lot more flexibility at the local district. In how you're utilizing your Perkins dollars. The spending is a lot more flexible. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for you to show us how CTE is helping you in your school system.
Shannon, we have a question about where that grant information is at.
Sure. I don't have that. Give me 1 second and I'll grab that link. I don't have it in my list of links.
And while she's finding that, oh, go ahead, Renee.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say the second extra grant that's available is for non-traditional ideas. So we are trying to really come up with ways to encourage females into STEM programs or any of the trades and industry programs. We are looking at ways to encourage males into the health professions areas, and in each area, I know in family consumer science, if we break that down into human services or culinary arts or other areas, that those two are very, are needing more male students into those disciplines. And so that is another simple grant. We have $60,000 a year available for non-trad grants. And we're just looking for new ideas, whether you're going to run a camp, whether you need extra materials, you let us know what it is. And that's another grant. And that's for all schools, not just small schools. Sorry, Megan.
It's okay. I was just going to mention, since we had a few join. Oh, Shannon, do you have 2 grant links you're putting in or 1?
Well, there's not a link for the non-trad that I've found yet, but I am putting in Katie Brooks's email, and she's the one that oversees that non-traditional grant. And so if you are interested in that, you can reach out to her for more information in the application. The other thing I was going to say, talking about getting folks together or using other resources, is our 2-year colleges have put together their own needs assessment for Perkins. And feel free to reach out to them, because they're going to have some of these components done, and they would be glad to work with you and work with your schools to look how your programs are aligning and how they can reach out and help you as well.
I have one last thing I wanted to mention on the funding, since we had some join us late. Just a reminder that, in previous years, a lot of schools or teachers, we've heard them refer to Perkins with a wish list. And so the purchasing or the way you're spending the money hasn't necessarily aligned to programming or the narrative in the Perkins E-Grant. And it's just been, well, I want this, and this year. And remember that your budget plan is going to have to align to your comprehensive local needs assessment, and that is a piece we'll be looking at. So if you have something that you already have in mind that you want to spend Perkins on, make sure that that is included within your needs assessment, so there's alignment between how you're spending your money and what you have found within your needs assessment. And that's a big shift, and you're going to want to explain that to your fellow teachers and school district and administrators, that there has to be an alignment between the needs assessment and the budget.
Any questions? Anything specific?
Do we have our last poll?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I know one school said they were finished, and I don't know if that person's still on or not, but would you, if you are, would you care to share maybe tricks to how you were able to complete yours?
That was me, Columbia Falls.
Okay.
And I don't feel finished anymore. So, no, we had filled it out, and I was hoping that this webinar would go over and cover and to make sure that I had done everything correctly. My biggest obstacles were the performance evaluations, because they were different. The numbers were different, and some were empty, and I didn't really understand those, but I have a better grip for that. It did take longer than I thought it was going to, as all things do. So be prepared for that. There were a lot of conversations with people who were sick of talking to me. Be prepared for that. There was a lot of eye-opening experiences and conversations. I have learned a lot about how great some of our CTE teachers are, and they're just like on top of it. And then how some of our CTE teachers really need to up their game a little bit. So those conversations were great. I do have a list of things I need to go back and fix, which I'm looking at probably 2 to 3 hours more work on it before it's actually finished. And most of the hours spent were conversations. So that's all I have to say.
That's wonderful feedback, Diane. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And I think the thing to remember is it is change. And I know it's such a weird year, because that seems like that's all we've done since March is change. But these were changes that were put into place long before the pandemic. And it's just unfortunate that they are coinciding with all of the crazy changes that are going on an almost hourly basis, it feels like at times. So we're very empathetic to that. And, we're going to have as much flexibility and grace as we can. The thing to remember in looking at that is, if you don't have something, it's okay to have holes in your application. Just remember that you're not going to get funding for those holes. if you don't have information to support why you would need that. But, you know, we also know that 2 years from now, when we're looking at revising and updating these needs assessments, that you already have the groundwork done. So keep that in mind. It is laying the groundwork for the next few years of Perkins. It is a way to look at how you're planning to grow your CTE programs in your communities. So don't hesitate to reach out to a specialist. I think I did put the link, but it is also on our website. If you're not sure who your liaison is, please reach out. We will get you in touch with them. If you're not sure how much your grant money is and you would like that information, we have access to our preliminary numbers. We won't have final numbers for a little bit just because we're trying to tie up loose ends on Perkins 1920 year. So there may be some additional dollars that roll into that, but don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. If you need help kind of getting meetings set up or started, specialists are absolutely willing to help you with that as well. So other questions?
Yeah, and just a reminder that your liaison from our office for your Perkins assignment might be different than, you know, if you are a CTE teacher and you have a specialist. So each of us 5 education specialists have assignments for Perkins. So if you don't know, that was in the chatter, please reach out. I see that a quarter of you approximately are still really overwhelmed. So please pick up the phone or send an email and connect with us. You know, that's what we're here for, and we're focusing on the next couple weeks.
If I may add something, this is Diane again. I would recommend that those of you that are just getting started to really look at that example from Miles City, because that broke it down and I was able to wrap my head around what seemed to be so much work, but a lot of this is interconnected. And if you read through the Miles City one, it just will give you a really good idea of what's expected. So thanks for the example on your webpage. That was so helpful for us.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, as we get a few of these in and some other schools are willing to let us share, we would be glad to put up another example, but we were happy to get that out there because we knew it would be helpful. Other questions?
Shannon, where would they find a list of the specialists if they're not sure who their Perkins liaison is?
It is on the website. I will give you the link again. There's the link in the chat, and it is on that Perkins 5 site. So if you get to the Perkins 5 site, it's up in the top. It just says CTE specialist list for Perkins grants. So.
Great. Well, if there are no more questions.
Yeah, we will not.
I'm sure you all have a few other things to do.